Now that we know about how synchronous and asynchronous programming works and how Node supports asynchronous programming, it's time for us to see what all asynchronous tasks, some of the tasks which Node can perform to act as a server-side technology. So I've chosen some important aspects like accessing a file, accessing a DB and all. So let's go one by one. So the first thing which I have taken for today is accessing the file system. So let's write a simple piece of code and see how to access file system in Node, right? So to do that, let's create a file and let's call it file demo.js, right? First of all, to access the file system, Node has a core module called fs. So let's import it is equal to require fs. So once you have the fs variable available with you, you can say fs dot read file, right? So there are two functions available. Either you can read the file synchronously or you can read the file asynchronously. We'll go with reading the file asynchronously, right? So let's read the file asynchronously. It takes like other functions, this also takes two parameters. One is the name of the file that it has to read, let's say sample.txt. Another one is the callback function which it has to invoke once it is done with its work, right? So this is the syntax. Now, same as other functions, it takes two inputs. Function argument, it function has two arguments. One is error and the other one is data, right? So what we shall do is we shall say console.log of, let's say, output the contents of the file onto the screen, data.txt. Sorry, data.toString, right? If you see, it is a buffer and we are just converting it into a string so that we'll get the readable data on the screen. We'll also have to create a sample.txt file and let's say hi, how are you, right? And I'll save it as sample.txt, right? Now let's go ahead and run it. You can see the contents of the file that is printed here. There is a documentation that is available which you can see, right? Node fs documentation in Google, where you can find many methods which are available for the fs, right? So the one which we used is read file, right? So you can see read file, this is the one which we used. Likewise, you see many options available to perform things on a file system. You can unlink a file, which you can delete a file, you can read a file, you can write to a file. So all of this is possible using the fs core module, right? So that is with the file system. So one main task of Node to act as a server-side technology is accessing file system, and yes, we are done with that here. Now the next thing which we see is how it can connect to a database, right? So these days the most common or the most popular databases that we see are NoSQL, MongoDB. So let's pick up MongoDB for today's example, and there are modules which are available to work with MongoDB. There are MongoDB drivers, which is an npm module called MongoDB, and there is another module called Mongoose, which also can be used to interact with MongoDB. So today I'm going to go ahead with the Mongoose module, right? So we'll have to first install the module, npm install mongoose. Let's save, right? So this will install the mongoose module for us, right? While that install, let's go ahead and create a file and say mongoose demo, right? So this is it. Now, like we always do, let's try to import the mongoose module so that we can work with it. Mongoose is equal to require of mongoose, right? So this is the DB access module that we are going to use. Now let's try, before you proceed with this sample, please go ahead and install the MongoDB uh, on your local machine, or you can always go ahead and use the Mongo Labs, which is available. I can show you that as well. So you can go to Google and say Mongo Labs, right? Here on cloud, right? You can always get free space as trial, but I have chosen to use my local instance of MongoDB, and the URL of the MongoDB is very much important. So let's try to connect to the uh, MongoDB now. So Mongoose is this, so I will have to pass the connection URL for the Mongoose to access MongoDB. So I'll say mongoose dot connect of, and I'll have to pass the URL, my connection string. So my connection string is MongoDB colon slash, and what is the host of my MongoDB? It is localhost, and MongoDB usually connects on 27017 port, and my DB name I would call it as demo, right? Once my connection is done, it'll return me a promise. It can either be a success or a failure. So there comes the concept of a promise, which you've already seen. Then, so once you have everything successful, you can go ahead and connect. So once the connection is successful, we can say that we have successfully connected to the database. We can say successfully connected to the DB, right? In case there is any error, I will have to catch it. So I can say in case there is any error, I can say console.log not connected to the DB, and I can always exit the node process which is running, right? So this is how I connect to the MongoDB. Now I have to store something into the database, right? So there should be a schema which is available for me to store. So now let's create a sample schema. I'll call my schema as user, right? So I can again say const user schema is equal to, I'm going to create a schema using, which is going to be used by Mongoose. So let me import Mongoose first. Mongoose is equal to require Mongoose, and then I'll say Mongoose dot, I have to define the schema. And what is my schema going to look like? So you can define my name, which is going to be of the type string, and the role, which is again going to be of the type string, right? So this is the schema which I have defined. So let me save it as user.js, right? I will have to export or expose this schema outside user.js so that it can be used by the mongoose demo.js. So let me say module dot exports is equal to, I'm going to expose this model. So I'll say mongoose dot model of, I'm going to expose the schema outside, and the schema is going to sit in the name of user. This is the name of my mongoose model, so user, and this user schema is the defines my user model. The user schema which I have defined here is going to define my user Mongoose model, and I'm exposing it outside, right? So coming back to the mongoose demo.js, so I'll have to import the user here. So I can say require, and I can say dot slash user, right? Let me write a function create user, right? This function is going to save a data. So what is my data now? So my data is user is equal to, I have to, my data has to be of the model format, right? So I'll say new user, then I'll say name is say Dave, and role is author. This user I want to persist onto the database, right? So you can see the prototyping chain coming into picture here. I have defined my user in the lines of my user schema, right? So I can say user dot save. I'm going to save this, and when my save is successful, then do this, right? Tell me console.log data saved, right? In case my save is not successful, then there is an error. Then say this is my error, and then say console.log of error occurred. Okay, then let's invoke the method create user, right? So what and all we have done, before you start with this, you will have to either create an instance in Mongo Labs, or you have to have a local instance of MongoDB running, and you need to have this MongoDB URL handy with you so that you can connect, right? You'll have to do an npm install for Mongoose so that you will be able to access it. You import the Mongoose library in yours, and then create a user schema, and then expose it as a user model, and try to connect to the MongoDB using the connection URL that you have, and create a sample data and try to save the data using the save method, right? Now I'm invoking the method create user. Let us see what is the output. So as you can see, successfully connected to the database, and the data is saved. So that is about accessing databases from the node code. So we have just done save, but like this you can do all possible operations like create, or find all, find one, delete. There are so many things which are available. Once again, you can go and look at Mongoose documentation to get a hands-on over the different methods which are available, right? Just Google for Mongoose documentation and you will be able to get. So you can see here there are different methods, different functionalities available, and everything is given with examples here. You can try them out. So we have come to the very important part of the course, which is Node acting as a HTTP server.